In this video, we're going to do some simple SQL queries. So in SQL, the language is typically broken into three parts: the data definition language, where you're creating a database; the data control language, where you are giving different users access to the information that you've stored in the database; and then finally, the data manipulation language, where you can work with the data. So we're going to be doing the last. So this database, the famous NorthWind database, has been, at least some version of it, has been set up by the W3 schools, and like a normal web user has some access. So the data definition language done, the data control language done, and then, so we're in the data manipulation language. And then within data manipulation language, there are sort of four basic actions. You can insert data, you can delete data, you can change data, called update, you can update data, and then you can select data. You can just look at it. We're going to be doing the looking, the select. So that's what we're doing with just within the three parts of SQL: the data manipulation language, within the four things you can do in the data manipulation language, the select. And that's one of our key words, select. And the other key word to get us started is from. So in a database, in a relational database, the data is organized relationally or in tables. So you have uh, columns of various properties, and then rows, and then sort of a combination of rows and columns make a table. And so the select just instructs that we want to look at the data, and the from says the source of the data. So here I am at w3schools.com/SQL/SQL_select.asp, and I'm going to hit on this try it yourself button, and that brings me over. And there are a bunch of tables, and it's giving me an example SQL statement, a fairly simple query, but I'm going to show you one that's even simpler. Let's click on customers. And it's going to show me down here, it's going to make a new query, select star from customers, and it's just going to show me everything. Star is going to say, give me everything, give me all of the columns, all of the rows at this stage. Of customers, there's also categories, employees, so back to customers. So that is sort of your simplest query, just using your keyword select, your keyword from. They are in all caps, but the sort of keywords of SQL tend not to be case sensitive, whereas the names of the tables and the names of the columns do tend to be case sensitive. So you've got to be careful in your typing. Star again means all the columns. So give me all the columns from customers. That's what we have. But we can go back to where they started. I don't remember their exact fields, but let's put in a customer name. Got to be careful. They're using a camel case notation. They put the words together, no spaces, but each sort of new word starts with capital letters and the remaining are small. That's just a convention. But we've got to be consistent with what they do, or it won't work. So contact name and address. Okay. I'm asking for three columns, three fields, and so they are separated by two commas. There's a semicolon at the end, so that's our sort of punctuation there. Comma between when I have a number of things, commas between them, a semicolon at the end, and let's hit run that query. So I'm still getting the 91 customer records, but now I'm just getting the three fields I asked for. And that is known as projection. So if I am pulling out certain columns, I'm said to be projecting out those columns. I have projected out customer name, contact name, and address. So let's just do another example. Let's go over to employees. So I'll just start by clicking on, I could have just typed, I had a SQL, like a little window for typing SQL. I could have just started there, but since I know I want employees and I'll get a generic query, from the employees table, that's a sort of a better place to start. It's going to type employees for me and spell it correctly. Now I'm going to say I want the first name and the last name. So I'm projecting out the two columns. I want one comma between them, and I'm pulling out the first two names. Now there is a fancier thing we can do. We can turn those two fields into one by concatenating. We're not doing that now. SQL has that ability, but not now. We're just keeping it simple. So we're just pulling out existing columns. There they are, the first name and the last name. Okay. So now the next thing, so we pulled out, we projected, we pulled out particular columns. Let's pull out particular rows. That's where we bring in the where clause. So there's a bunch of examples here, very convenient, set up by the W3 schools. Let's go over to the where. Again, I could just type in that window, but let's look at their example and then we'll make another example from it. So they have as their example, select star from customers where country equals Mexico. Try it yourself. So here we go. And now let's run that. Now we know in customers over here, it's telling us there are 91 records, but in our query, we are pulling out 5 records. We are pulling out the 5 records of the customers whose country is Mexico. So we have this, I'm going to call it a where clause, some condition, and we are only picking out the records for which that condition is true. Another word, and various words for conditions. Another one of them is predicate. So this is something that is true or false. Either the country is equal to Mexico or it is not. Country is the name of a field, and so it is not in quotes. You could put it in a tick mark, I believe. I've seen that. So a tick mark for the names of the fields. Let's see if that still works. It does indeed. So customers or country, those things can be put in tick marks, but actual data. So we make a distinction in databases between metadata and data. So metadata, the names of tables and fields, can be put in these tick marks, whereas string data, names of things like countries, would be put in quotes, and that could be single or double. So double would also work here. I had gone too far. So if I put in double quotes, same result. So if I'm working with names of columns, names of tables, I can put those in tick marks. But data, and that's metadata, the names of the tables and the fields. But the actual data, if it's a string, if it's a name of something, goes in quotes. Okay, single or double both work. Okay. Certain names, that just reminds me, like a name like with an apostrophe in it, like O'Connor or something like that. Those kind of names wreak havoc because single quotes and double quotes like play a particular role in SQL. So we'll worry about that another time, but just sort of came to my mind when I was saying single or double quotes that there's sometimes the data has a single or a double quote in it, and that takes extra care. Okay, so now when we chose fields, we called that projection. When we are picking out certain rows, we'll call that selection, and we can combine them. So I can pick out the customer name and the contact name and the address. Oops. I can pick out those 3 fields so I can be projecting and selecting. So now I'm picking out just the 3 fields of the people who were in, whose country was Mexico. So I do not have to pull out the field that is used in the criterion, in the condition, in the where clause, in the predicate. Um, I often will just to sort of convince myself that it's right, but I don't need to, as shown here. Okay. Um, so that is the where clause. Okay. Now a this where is followed by what we call a boolean, something that is true or false. So we are picking out the records for which the condition was true, for which the predicate is true. There are ways, certain what we call Boolean operators, ways of combining conditions to make sort of a larger, more complex condition. And that's what I want to show next. So there are and or. And means that I'm going to take, say, at least two conditions, and I need them both to be true to pull out the record, to get an overall true. And then, but I'm going to do an or, which means if one or the other or both conditions is true, then I will select out the record. So let's look at their example of an or, and then uh, down here's their example, and try it for yourself. So they are picking from customers where the country is Germany or country is Spain. So one thing is that the it's like a full condition between the or. So it's country equals Germany or country equals Spain. A lot of times people will want to say country equals Germany or Spain and forget to say country again. Um, and that's sort of not correct. There's a different way to do something similar to that, but typically you want a full condition, then your Boolean operator, your and or your or, and then another full condition. And then again, we can project in here. So we can run that. We're picking out people from Germany and Spain. There were 16 altogether. We can pick out particular fields for them. And let's just, again, just do another example, not just the supplied one, but let's go to like suppliers. We'll do something similar. Let's say suppliers, and we'll do France or Germany for them. All right, so let's go over to suppliers. Um, and now we want make sure that the semicolon is the last thing. So then we want from, and we want, there's again here a country, and we want it to be equal to, and then it's a string literal, so France, and then our Boolean operator or, and then the full condition again. So starting with the field name country equals, what did we say, Germany or France. Okay, so, and let's do that, and then, oops, did something wrong. Select star from suppliers. Where, not from again. There we go. Silly mistake. So there are the country is Germany or France. Okay. So that is a Boolean connecting, making a more a compound or more complicated where clause. And we'll leave it there for now. We're trying to keep it simple, so let's keep it simple and end there. More to follow. Thanks for your attention.